My dad drove a garbage truck for 20 years. He worked hard to support the family, never cutting corners. But people looked down on him all the time. They said he smelled bad. They looked down on his job. Even when a rich kid hit him with a car, they used connections to twist the truth. My dad got blamed for the whole thing. We ended up drowning in debt. My dad became permanently disabled. But the guy who hit him, he became some big-shot entrepreneur. I kept my head down for years waiting. I studied hard, got a good job and rose back up. Then I tore down the cover those rich people hid behind. My dad drives a garbage truck. The whole school knows. Right in the first week of school, our homeroom teacher had everyone introduce their family. When it was my turn, the fat kid in the front row turned around and mouthed something at me. He mouthed 3 words. "I know you." I froze for a couple seconds. Then it hit me. He lives in the neighborhood next to mine. Every morning at 6:30, my dad's garbage truck drives right past his building. After that, Garbage Boy became my nickname. It wasn't my classmates who started it. It was his mom. One time after school, the fat kid ran into his mom at the gate. She saw me and said super loud, "Oh wow. Isn't that the garbage collector's son? You're in the same class as him?" The fat kid nodded with a disgusted look. She kept going. "Then stay away from him. He's dirty." The fat kid laughed. I was standing 6 feet away, gripping my backpack strap, my palms sweating. I didn't say anything. I learned early on, if you argue with people like that, my dad would be on the school's blacklist the next day. He got that job through the neighborhood office. Been doing it for years. I wasn't about to get him fired. After that, I became a ghost in class. Homework handouts never came to me. No one invited me to hang out during breaks. In PE when we split into groups, I was always the one left till the end. The PE teacher couldn't be bothered, and just said you join Team 3. The Team 3 leader looked at me, rolled his eyes. I was used to it. But one time it went too far. In winter, someone snuck a bag of trash into my backpack without me noticing. I carried it all day before finding it. The inner pocket was full of stinking orange peels and wrappers. I crouched in a bathroom stall, pulling it out piece by piece. My hands frozen red. Spent half an hour and still couldn't get it all clean. That day when I got home, my dad asked why my backpack smelled. I said soup from the cafeteria spilled. He took it and washed it 3 times. Hung it on the balcony all night. The next morning when he left, the backpack was still dripping. He stood at the balcony door for a moment, didn't say anything, turned around, got in the car and left. But my dad doesn't know any of this. He leaves at 3:30 every morning, drives his yellow garbage truck, from east side of the city to the west side. He picks up trash from 23 neighborhoods. In the summer, the truck can hit over 40 degrees Celsius. You could smell it 2 streets away. When he comes back, even 3 showers can't get the smell off. My mom bought a separate washing machine for him and put it in the corner of the balcony, just for his work clothes. Every time after washing, the machine itself would stink for 3 days. But my dad never felt ashamed. He makes $3,200 a month. It pays for my school and my mom's medication. My mom has a bad heart. She's been taking an imported medicine for years, over $400 a bottle, and insurance doesn't cover it. My dad never lets her worry about money. Every time she asks him, he just says, we've got it. Just take your meds." Every day when he comes back he stands by my door for a while. No lights on. Not a word. Just stands there watching for 2 minutes. At first I didn't know. But then my mom told me. She said, "Your dad's first thing when he gets home is to check on you in your room. Seeing you hunched over your homework, then he feels at ease." I pretended not to know. But every time he pushed the door open, I'd straighten my back a little more. Winter of my sophomore year, school had parent-teacher conferences. My mom wasn't feeling well, so she didn't go. My dad took a half day off. He came home 3 hours early to shower. The washing machine roared in the whole afternoon. He changed into a faded white shirt and burned off the loose threads on the cuff with a lighter. Right before leaving, he stood in front of the mirror for so long, running his fingers through his hair. The more he ran, the messier it got. In the end my mom couldn't test it, grabbed a comb and fixed it for him. That day, waiting for him at the school gate, I could see him getting off the bus from far away. His shirt was tucked into his pants. He walked a little awkwardly. He was used to wearing work pants. Switching to dress pants made his legs feel foreign. He walked up to me. A bit nervous, he asked if his hair was okay. I said it was fine. He said, "Let's go." We went into the classroom. I sat next to him. The chubby kid in the front row had his mom there too. She was wearing a mink coat. When she saw my dad, she paused. Then the corner of her mouth twitched up. She turned away. My dad didn't notice. He sat behind that little desk. His back was straight as an arrow. His hands were placed neatly on his knees. Like a little kid, the homeroom teacher came in and started reading out the grades. My name was 6th on the list. My dad's shoulders relaxed a bit. When the meeting ended, chubby kid's mom walked past our row. Her footsteps paused for a moment. She looked down at my dad's shoes. A pair of sneakers washed gray. The soles were worn down uneven. He didn't say anything. Just walked off. But that look, I remembered it for the rest of my life. My dad had no idea. He held my report card, flipping it over and over a few times. Finally he pressed it flat, tucked it into his shirt pocket, and patted it. When we went downstairs, he asked what I wanted to eat. "Dad'll take you." I said, "Whatever." He took me out for a bowl of beef noodles. He got himself a plain bowl and put all the beef into mine. It took him 10 minutes to finish his bowl. He kept looking at my report card. When he got to the English section, his eyebrows furrowed a little. But he didn't say anything. Before we left, he added a fried egg for me. Said I needed to eat more now that I was a senior. On the way home, he walked ahead of me. His steps were a bit slow. That washed-out shirt fluttered under the streetlight. I walked behind him, looking at the white hairs sprouting on the back of his head, one by one, like icicles on a power line. Back then, I thought, when I graduated, I'd definitely buy him a new pair of shoes. Something happened in March of my senior year in high school. That day, a little after 4 in the morning, my dad went out on his usual route. At an intersection, a Porsche hit him. His garbage truck flipped completely on its side, spilling trash all over the road. My dad was trapped in the cab. He broke 3 ribs, ruptured his spleen, and fractured his right leg. The other driver was drunk. He was a guy in his 30s. His last name was Zhao. He owned a chemical plant in the city. He didn't run after the crash, but he didn't call 911 either. He made a call first. Then the cops showed up, and an ambulance came. By the time my dad got to the hospital, he was already unconscious. He was covered in blood, his clothes stinking of garbage. My mom almost passed out when she got the call. I went with her to the hospital. We waited in the hallway all night. My mom sat on a chair, clutching my hand tight, her nails dug into the back of my hand. It hurt like hell. When dawn came, my dad came out of the operating room. He survived. When they wheeled him out, he had 3 tubes sticking out of him. His face was as pale as the wall. My mom leaned over his bed crying, shaking all over. The nurse couldn't calm her down. I stood at the foot of the bed, looking at his right leg wrapped up like a dumpling. And I remembered just yesterday, he said he'd make me extra nutritious food since I was a senior. That afternoon I went back home to get some clean clothes for him. When I opened the balcony door, his work uniform from yesterday was still hanging on the line, swaying in the wind. There were oil stains on the sleeves, and the collar was frayed from wear. I stood there for about 5 minutes. But it wasn't over. The day the accident report came out, I happened to be home. My mom answered the phone. After she hung up, her face changed. I asked what was wrong. She said she wasn't sure. Maybe the determination letter was wrong. I took a look at it. My dad was fully at fault. I read through that accident report page by page. My hands were shaking. It said the driver, a guy named Fang, ran a red light. But that intersection at 4 in the morning didn't even have a red light. It was all flashing yellow. And my dad drove for years, never once ran a red. My mom told me not to say anything to her. She was already hurting enough. But the money was still coming in. A week later, our homeroom teacher mentioned it during class. Said some students were going through tough times. I looked up. But the more you struggle, the more you gotta be careful. No matter what job you do, safety comes first. Don't make trouble for yourself. And don't make trouble for your family either. He didn't say a name. But the whole class knew who he was talking about. I was sitting in the back row, head down, digging my nails into my palm. Fatty turned around and looked at me. I still remember that look. It wasn't pity. It was that I told you so kind of look. I didn't say anything. My dad was in the hospital bed for 2 months. I went to visit him. He had lost a ton of weight. His ribs were still wrapped in bandages. When he saw me come in, he quickly shoved something under his pillow. It was my report card. He came to the hospital to see it again. It was all dog-eared and worn out. He asked me how school was going. I said it was fine. He said that's good. Dad's fine. He'd be back on his feet in a couple of days. A couple of days turned into 3 months. The day he finally got out of bed, his right leg couldn't fully straighten anymore. He limped when he walked, like that leg was borrowed. The Zhao family never showed up. Didn't even call. But a few days after my dad got out of the hospital, the local news ran a story. Outstanding entrepreneur, Zhao Weihua wins Youth Entrepreneur of the Year. On TV he was standing on stage, dressed in a suit, hair slicked back and shiny, holding a plaque and smiling at the camera. My mom quickly turned off the TV. The remote hit the coffee table. And bounced. It fell on the floor. The TV popped out. Rolled right to my feet. I bent down and picked it up. Pushed it back in. Turned the TV back on. Changed the channel. Nobody mentioned Zhao Weihua's name. My dad paid the medical bills himself. He made $200 a month. After rent and my mom's meds. It wasn't much to begin with. That bill left him owing relatives over $20,000. Took him over 2 years to pay it off. My mom went to see a lawyer later. The lawyer looked over the paperwork, said your case won't be easy to win. The other side has connections. The report was already finalized. Chances of overturning it are slim. And he looked at my dad. Even if you fight it, it's a long shot. You can't afford the time or money. My mom walked out of the law office. Squatted by the door for 10 minutes. Didn't cry. Just squatted there. I pulled her up. Said, Mom, let's go home. On the bus ride home, my mom leaned against the window. Eyes closed. I didn't know if she was asleep. Her fingers kept tracing on her knee. Like she was writing something. Later I leaned in to look. It was numbers. She was doing math. Back then the home phone rang every day. Debt collectors. Relatives. The hospital. The traffic police demanding fines. Every time my mom hung up, she'd stand in the kitchen for a bit. Then come out and go about her day. My dad didn't know any of it. My mom told me not to tell him. That year I turned 18. For the first time I realized growing up wasn't a good thing. Later I got into college. A 211 school in the provincial capital, environmental engineering major. 3 months before the college entrance exam, I only slept 4 hours a day. Up at 5:30 a.m. memorizing vocab. Still doing practice problems at midnight. After my dad got out of the hospital, he couldn't stay up late anymore. But before he left for work at 3 a.m. every day, he'd leave a boiled egg on the table. On the shell written in pen 2 words, hang in there. The pen was different every time. Sometimes the handwriting was big. Sometimes small. Sometimes I wrote a wrong character. Scratched it out and rewrote it. Later I saved up over 30 eggshells, put them in a plastic bag, and hid them under the bed. The day of the college entrance exam, he didn't take me. He was afraid my classmates would see him. I took the bus to the testing site by myself. When I finished the test and came out, he was waiting for me, 3 bus stops away from the school gate. He was sitting alone on the curb, his yellow garbage truck parked nearby. He saw me stand up and asked how I did. I said, not bad. He nodded and said, get in, I'll take you back. I climbed into the passenger seat. The car still smelled sour. But that day when I smelled it, it didn't bother me. The day my dad took me to check into school, he insisted on taking the train with me. The AC on the train was way too strong. And his legs couldn't take it. He was sweating from the pain. I said, let's just go back. He shook his head and said, I have to see what your school looks like. When we got to the school, he stood outside my dorm building for a long time, looking up at it, without saying a word. I said, come in and sit for a bit. He said, no need. He was afraid my roommates would pick up on his smell. He was wearing new clothes that day. There was no smell. But he thought there was. After that registration trip, he went back to work. Still the garbage truck. Still starting at 3:30 a.m. What changed was how he got in. He had to lift his right leg with his hands first, then twist his whole body to slide into the cab. My mom watched him from the balcony, and she never turned around until his truck had turned out of the neighborhood. One time I came home for the weekend. I woke up a little after 4 a.m. and walked out to the balcony. The sky was still dark. My dad's truck was just starting up, its yellow lights flashing through the morning fog. He saw me on the balcony and gave a quick honk, just a short beep, like he was saying, "Go back to sleep." I didn't go inside until the yellow light went off. During my 4 years of college, I never told anyone what my dad did for a living. My roommate asked what my dad did. I said he drives. They thought he drove a taxi. I didn't correct them. Sophomore year, I went home for National Day. My dad picked me up at the station. His leg was a little better than before, but he still couldn't walk straight. I saw him standing at the exit from far away, holding a plastic bag in his hand. Inside were 2 oranges. He shoved the oranges into my hands and said, "Eat them if you get thirsty on the way." I peeled one and gave him half. He held it in his hand without eating and kept holding it until we got home. The summer of my junior year, I stayed at school for a project and didn't go back. On Mid-Autumn Festival, my dad called me and said he had sent me a box. I opened it up, mooncakes, beef jerky, and a new pair of sneakers. There was a note stuffed in the shoebox, with one line written on it, "Study hard, Feng. Dad." The writing was all crooked and messy. My dad didn't get much education, didn't even finish middle school. I tucked that note into my textbook. Over those 4 years, the Zhao family's chemical plant kept growing bigger. I saw their name on local environmental news a few times. Zhao's Chemical honored as city's environmental protection model unit. The photo showed the guy who hit my dad holding up a sign and smiling, his teeth really white. I screenshotted that news article and saved it on my phone, locked it with a password in the photo gallery. I never showed it to anyone. I didn't even open it that often myself. But I knew. In my graduation year, I passed the civil service exam for the city's Environmental Protection Bureau. Ranked first in the written test, and first in the interview too. I was assigned to the Solid Waste Management section, handling chemical plant waste disposal for solid waste. Hazardous waste all falls under this department. On my first day reporting for duty, I got a nice desk, and from the window I could see the whole city skyline. I sat down in the chair, took out my phone, and opened that encrypted photo album. After looking at it for 3 seconds, I turned it off and started working. For the first 3 years, I rotated through entry-level positions. Spent a year in each section of the Housing Inspection Team's Environmental Impact Assessment Office. In my 3rd year, when I rotated to Solid Waste Management, the section chief showed me a list of companies. 30 chemical companies under key supervision. Zhao's Chemical was number 7. I stared at that name for 3 seconds. Then I asked, "When was the last law enforcement inspection at Zhao's Chemical?" The chief flipped through the records. 2 years ago, no issues found. I said, "I'll apply to do a random check next week." The chief looked at me, didn't say anything. After 2 seconds, he pushed the list over to me. "Handle it yourself." When I went to Zhao's Chemical the next week, Zhao Weihua wasn't there. The plant manager showed me around the production area, smiling the whole time. Didn't let me into a single workshop. The wastewater treatment equipment was running. The hazardous waste storage room was fully equipped. The floor was spotless. I asked a few technical questions. His answers were airtight. When I left at the factory gate, the plant manager shook my hand and said, "Engineer Fang, please guide us more in the future. Our boss Zhao always prioritizes environmental protection." I said, "Sure." Got in the car. I wrote one line in my notebook. Records are unusually neat. Suspected pre-preparation. Recommend adding to key monitoring. Later that line sat in the system. No one read it. But I kept a copy. After that, I went from clerk to section chief in 4 years. No connections. Just grinding. Most overtime. Took the worst cases. chewed the toughest bones. Colleagues call me Chief Fang. Some people behind my back call me Fang the Stubborn. Not afraid to touch anything. Not selling face to anyone. I know exactly why I'm like this. My dad taught me. He drove a garbage truck for 20 years. Never missed collecting a single bin. Never took a penny more. He said a person's bottom line has nothing to do with their job. It's about their heart. In the winter of my second year on the job, I handled a case. The owner of a small chemical factory came to find me. I slipped him a card. I didn't accept it. The next day I led a team to check it out. Found they were dumping industrial wastewater into the river at night. When they came to inspect the wind, that owner stood at the factory gate cursing me out. He ranted for over an hour. Cussing about every damn thing. I stood inside the police tape. Listened, didn't talk back. That night I drove home. Sat in the car downstairs for a long time. No lights on inside the car. I stared up at my dad's room window. The light was on. He was waiting for me. 12 years ago, at 4 a.m. He was also on his way to a job. Also waiting. But he didn't make it to dawn that time. The day of the accident was a Wednesday. A little after 3 p.m., a call came into the office. The whistleblower said Zhao's Chemicals was illegally dumping hazardous waste in an abandoned quarry on the outskirts. A massive amount. Maybe thousands of tons. I picked up the phone. Asked 4 questions. Exact location. Type of waste. Any evidence. Whistleblower identity. He answered the first 3. Fourth one, he hung up. I put the phone down, opened the map and checked the location of that quarry. It was in a mountain hollow on the outskirts. Surrounded by wasteland. The nearest village was 3 miles away. A perfect spot. Remote enough. Hidden enough. Unless someone specifically tipped it off, nobody would ever find it in a lifetime. I called the Environmental Inspection Detachment on the landline. Told them to bring equipment and sample the place early tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling for 5 minutes. Zhao's Chemicals. Zhao Weihua. That bright smile with really white teeth. I pulled out my phone from my pocket. Opened the encrypted photo album. Took another look. Then locked the screen. Placed the phone face down on the desk. Thought for a second. Then picked it up again and called my dad. Dad. How's your leg been lately? Not bad. Hurts a little when it rains. What's up with you? Nothing. Just asking. Is something going on? I paused for 2 seconds. No. Dad. Get some rest. I hung up. The next morning at 10. The inspection team got back. They rushed the sample results to the lab. The report came out at 4 in the afternoon. The benzene levels were 400 times over the limit. Lead was 200 times over. The groundwater nearby also showed contamination seeping in. I took the report to the deputy director. His last name was He. In his 50s. Half his hair was gone. A veteran who worked his way up from the Environmental Protection Bureau. Director, he read the report. He took off his glasses and wiped them. Then he asked me, "What are you planning to do?" Follow procedure. Refer it for criminal investigation. Director, he didn't say anything. Kept wiping his glasses. Then he reached over and closed the office door. Lowered his voice and said, "Fang Zheng, you know who Zhao Weihua is, right?" "I know. You might not know all the connections he has in the city." Director, he. The benzene is 400 times over the limit. The groundwater is already contaminated. Director, he looked at me for a long time. Finally he put his glasses back on. And said, "Do what you gotta do. Follow the process. Don't skip any steps. I'll sign off on it." "Thanks, Director, he." "Don't thank me. You've got bigger balls than me." I walked out of Director He's office. I stood in the hallway and lit a cigarette. I don't actually smoke. That cigarette was from a business meeting a month ago. Someone from Zhao's Chemical gave it to me. It had been sitting in my drawer ever since. After I finished it, I stubbed it out and tossed it into the trash. The 3 days after making a move were the weirdest 3 days. Day 1. A guy claiming to be Zhao Weihua's cousin came to my office. He was carrying 2 boxes of tea. Right off the bat he said, "Director Fang, you're young and talented." I didn't even let him put the tea down. He said, "Boss Zhao wants to take you out to dinner." I said, "I've been busy lately. Some other time." He stood at the door and smiled. Then he said, "Director Fang, making a friend like me won't cost you anything." I said, "Take a right out the door, the elevator's that way." He left. He didn't take the tea. I told my people to give the tea to the cleaning lady. Day 2. I got a call. It was my college senior. After graduating, he went to some department up in the province that no one quite knows what it does. He chatted for 10 minutes on the phone. Finally he got to the point. "Xiao Fang, some things need to be handled the right way. Zhao's Chemical is one of the city's biggest taxpayers. If you go after him, a lot of people are gonna have a bad time." I said, "Senior, it was 400 times the legal limit." There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Then he said, "Well, watch your own back then." Day 3. My phone got a text from an unknown number. No message. Just a picture. My dad buying groceries at the neighborhood entrance. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I called the number back. It rang 6 times, nobody picked up. I dialed again. This time someone answered. A guy. Sounded young. "Director Fang, what can I do for you?" I said. "Take another one." "What?" "Try taking another one." The guy on the other end laughed. "Director Fang, don't get so worked up. I was just passing through. You can pass through anywhere you want. But if you pass by me, I'll make sure you never pass through anything again." The other side went quiet. I said, "Did you hear me clearly?" "Clearly." I hung up the phone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, looking through all the information on Zhao's Chemical, from registration details to pollution discharge permits, from environmental impact approvals to years of inspection records. I went through 3 times. We found a key piece of information. In Zhao Chemical's environmental review approval, there's a clause. The plant's anti-seepage layer must meet the hazardous waste landfill pollution control standard. That means, if they dump illegally, it's not just administrative penalties. It's also a criminal offense. Enough for a criminal case. Wenjing and I leaned back on the couch, closed our eyes. All I could see was that crossroads at 4 a.m. My dad was trapped in the driver's seat, covered in blood. His clothes reeked of garbage. After Zhao Weihua finished his call, he stood by the road waiting for the cops to show up, for his connections to kick in, for that twisted accident report that flipped everything. He got it. 12 years later. Now it's my turn to wait. I opened my eyes, got up and poured a glass of water in the kitchen. As I passed by my dad's room, the door was slightly ajar. He was lying on his side in bed. His right leg was hanging off the blanket. That leg he can never straighten. 12 years now. Even when sleeping, it stays out of the blanket. I stood at the door and stared at him for a long time. Remembered when I was a senior in high school, he was lying in a hospital bed. Under his pillow was my report card. Remembered the first time he got up on crutches, took 3 steps and ran out of breath. Remembered that pair of faded gray sneakers. One sole was higher than the other. I gently pulled the door shut, went back to the living room, and went through Zhao Chemical's files again. This time not to find evidence. It was because he was going soft. By dawn I finished the files. I closed the folder, went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. In the mirror my eyes were red. Outside it was just getting light. Exactly like that 4 a.m. sky 12 years ago. The next morning, I led a joint team with the police, environmental inspectors, and I went to that quarry. Over a dozen enforcement vehicles. Set up a perimeter. Drones were flying overhead. Sampling crews were digging below. At 3 meters deep, the shovel hit something black and sticky. It was a mix of hazardous waste. The stench was sharp. Even with a mask on, you could still smell it. Sampling. Sealed. Evidence secured. Then the public security officer patted me on the shoulder and said, "Section Chief Fang, you're tough." I said, "Everyone worked hard." In the afternoon, the shutdown order came down. Zhao's Chemical was suspended for rectification. The boss, Zhao Weihua, was taken in by the police for investigation. That afternoon when the news got out, someone came to see me. It wasn't my cousin this time. Not my senior fellow apprentice either. It was Zhao Weihua's wife. She was dressed all in black. She looked 10 years older than she did over a decade ago. When she walked into my office, her legs were weak. As soon as she stepped in, she tried to kneel. I quickly signaled a colleague to hold her up, but she still went down on her knees. Section Chief Feng. Her voice was broken. Give me a way out. The child is still young. If old Zhao goes inside, our family is finished. How much money do you want? I stood behind my desk, looking down at her. She knelt on the floor, tears carving 2 gullies through her makeup. I thought back to 12 years ago, my mom squatting outside the law firm's door. I thought about my dad's right leg that never straightened out. I thought about that accident report that twisted black into white. I thought about my homeroom teacher standing at the podium, saying, "Don't cause trouble for your family." I crouched down to look her in the eye. My voice was very quiet. 12 years ago, your husband ran over a street sweeper while driving. After the crash, he didn't call 911. He called to pull strings first. She froze. That street sweeper was Fang Aguo. He's my dad. Her pupils suddenly contracted. The medical bills totaled $47,800. Your husband didn't pay a single cent. My dad lay in bed for 3 months. His right leg still can't straighten out even now. He's 56 this year. And he still needs a cane to walk. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. You said the child is still young. Back when I was a senior in high school, I was studying for the college entrance exam. At school, people called me the son of a trash collector for 3 years. Your family isn't worth a damn. I stood up, shoved my hands in my pockets, and said, "Go tell your husband." 12 years ago at that intersection at 4 in the morning, he owes my dad an apology. Now he owes more than just an apology. He sat down on the floor and cried for a long time. I didn't say anything else. I opened the office door, called a co-worker in to help him out. Right before I closed the door, he looked back at me. That look was exactly the same as my mom's when she was squatting outside the law firm. But I didn't feel sorry for him. I just thought, 12 years is way too long. That night I went home. My dad was sitting on the couch waiting for me. There was a plate of food on the coffee table, covered with a bowl. He never waits for me to eat. But today, he did. I changed my shoes, walked over and sat down. He lifted the bowl. It was braised pork belly, my favorite when I was a kid. He said, "Your mom said you've been busy lately. Told me not to bother you." I said, "Yeah. I have a case right now." He picked up a piece of meat and put it in my bowl. There was a moment of silence. Then he said, "Zhao Weihua. Is he the one who hit me back then?" My chopsticks paused. "How did you know?" Old Zhang downstairs told me today. Said he saw it on TV. I stared at the meat in my bowl and said nothing. My dad put down his chopsticks. "Feng Zheng. Yeah? Be an upright person. Don't use your power for personal revenge." I looked up at him. His face had aged a lot in the last 2 years, wrinkles crawling from his eyes all the way to his temples. But his eyes were still bright, just like when he came to parent-teacher conferences for me back in the school days. I said, "Dad, he wasn't arrested because he hit you. His chemical plant illegally buried hazardous waste. This is 400 times over the limit. The groundwater is all contaminated. The wells in the 3 villages nearby are all ruined." He looked at me. "Dad, if I don't investigate him, those villagers will drink poisoned water for the rest of their lives." He was silent for a long time. Then he picked up his chopsticks again and put another piece of meat on my plate. "Eat." I lowered my head, shoved the meat into my mouth, chewed for a while but couldn't swallow. He didn't touch his chopsticks either. Just sat across from me watching me eat. Mum was washing dishes in the kitchen. The faucet was running loud. He hummed a tune. Not very loud. It was an old song from his younger days. He hadn't hummed in years. My dad called out to him, "Come eat." Mum said, "You two go ahead. I'll finish these dishes first. Leave the dishes. Come eat now." Mom dried her hands and came out, sat down next to my dad. 3 of us around one table. My dad put another piece of meat on my plate, then put one on Mom's too. Mom took a bite, chewing and chewing. Tears started falling. My dad didn't look. He shoveled a mouthful of rice into his mouth, chewed really loud. Then some time passed. The case was decided. Zhao Weihua got 6 years. Zhao's chemical had its discharge permit revoked and was shut down for good. I didn't go on the day of the verdict. I got the notice at my office. After hanging up, I stood by the window for 10 minutes. The city outside looked exactly like 2 years ago. Just a few more buildings. Later I heard cleaning up the groundwater around the quarry cost the city over 20 million. Running water was hooked up for the 3 villages. Some villager was on TV being interviewed, saying thank you to the government. Nobody knew who they were thanking. And it didn't matter. The second weekend after the news came out, I ran into that fat guy at the supermarket. The one who sat in front of me in high school. He'd gotten a lot fatter. Pushing a shopping cart, with a kid sitting inside it. He froze for a second when he saw me, then smiled. "Feng Zheng, that's you, right?" I said. "Yeah. You work at the Environmental Protection Bureau now?" He just went, "Oh." It was a bit awkward. He looked down at the groceries in my cart, then looked back at me. "I heard it was you who handled the Zhao Chemicals case." I didn't say anything. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then suddenly said, "So, about high school. Don't take it to heart. We were young back then. Didn't know any better." I looked at him. He looked a lot older than before. Heavy bags under his eyes. Half his hair gone. His son in the shopping cart was calling out for daddy. He leaned down and said something comforting. When he looked up at me, there was something in his eyes I couldn't put into words. I said, "Your son's shoes are pretty nice." He looked down at those little sneakers and gave a small smile. His grandma bought them. I nodded and pushed the cart away. When I got to the checkout, I glanced back. He was bent over by a shelf wiping his son's mouth. His movements were clumsy. It took 2 swipes with the tissue to get it clean. I didn't tell him. That winter it wasn't him who stuffed trash into my backpack. But I didn't need an apology from him. 12 years worth of debts. The one who really owes me is already inside. The day the news came out happened to be my dad's birthday. I didn't tell him ahead of time. After work I bought a cake and groceries. Went home and cooked a whole table of food. My dad stood at the kitchen door on his cane, watching me work. He said, "When did you learn to cook?" I said I picked it up watching the college cafeteria. At dinner, I poured him a glass of liquor. He held the cup and stared at the liquor for a long time. Suddenly he said, "Feng Zheng, Dad has always felt sorry for you." I froze. "When you were little, I picked you up at your school gate in the garbage truck twice. And each time, your classmates laughed at you. After that, you wouldn't let me come to school anymore." He said this with his head down. His voice very soft. Dad knows. Dad knows everything." My hand clenched into a fist under the table. He fumbled in his pants pocket for a moment and pulled something out. He placed it on the table. It was my report card from the parent-teacher conference in my sophomore year of high school. The paper had already turned yellow. The creases were patched with several layers of transparent tape. He had been carrying it on him all along. I looked at him. He looked at me. The seat from 12 years ago. The broken rib. The right leg that can never straighten again. Me, sitting in the last 3 rows of the classroom, head down. My mom squatting outside the lawyer's office. All of it was tucked in his pocket. I couldn't speak. He raised the glass and took a sip, put it down, then look at me and say, "Feng Zheng. You're better than your dad." The garbage truck outside was rolling past downstairs. Its yellow light flashed twice. The engine roar faded away. My dad turned to look out the window. Then turned back and said, "That's my apprentice. Only been here 3 months. Still green. Learned it from you." I've been training him for half a year. Nice kid. Just keep stalling out." He picked up his cup and took another sip. A drop of liquor slid down the corner of his mouth. He wiped it off with the back of his hand. "Feng Zheng. Your dad's getting old." From now on, he couldn't finish. Outside, the garbage truck's yellow light turned the corner, disappeared into the night. The engine sound grew farther and farther away, until only a faint hum remained in the distance. My dad stared in that direction for a long time. Then he pushed the cup toward me. "Pour another one." I filled it up. "Dad." "Yeah? The apprentice you trained. He's gotta be good." He froze for a second. Then he smiled. a really small smile. The wrinkles round his eyes crinkled up. I smiled too. Poured him another cup. That's all.